with an algorithm given is an example of selection or iteration. Now selection, if you think about let's say a selection box of chocolates, you decide whether you if I like one type of chocolate or if I like another chocolate, otherwise else I might prefer another one. So selection is all about if and else statements. Okay, and you can see here we've got if and else statements. So this is selection. Iteration is all about doing things over and over again. So if I reiterate, it means I'm going to tell you something over and over again. I'm going to reiterate something. Okay, and that's all to do with loops. And loops are either for loops or while loops. Okay, for loops are called definite iteration, and while loops are indefinite iteration. So you can see here's a for loop, that's a loop, so that's iteration. This is a while loop, that's a loop, iteration, and this is a for loop again, and that's iteration. Now it said a fast food restaurant offers half-price meals if the customer is a student or has a discount card. Okay, so it's a student or discount card, you get 50% off. The offer is not valid on Saturdays. The restaurant needs an algorithm designed to help employees work out if the customer can have a half-price meal or not. The algorithm should input the required data. So the first thing that we need to do, remember, an any is to start, and somewhere at the end we need an end. Now for the smart ones among you who perhaps struggled with flowcharts, got a mark just by doing that, and that's worth doing. Anyway, so the first thing it needs to do is input the required data. So what data do we need? We need to know, are you a student or not? We need to know, do you have a discount card or not? And we need to know what day of the week it is. So let's input those things. So we can do those all in one input statement here. We can have 3 separate ones if you wanted to. So we've got 3 input statements. And input is a parallelogram. So we want to say input are you a student? So I'll call that is a student. I'm going to, let's get rid of this box for now, I need more room. Input discount card. And I'm going to input the day of the week. Okay, what day of the week it is. Alright, so there's my 3 inputs that I've got. And I'm inputting those into variables is student, discount card, and day. So what it needs to do now is, so I've now input the required data. I now need to decide if the customer is entitled to a discount or not. Okay. Notice also I need to know what the price of a meal is in order to work out what the result of the calculation is. So I'm also going to input the cost of the meal here. Okay? Right, so when we go forwards from there, I now need to decide if they're a student. So is student, when do they get a discount? They get a discount if they're a student or a discount card. So is student or has discount card. So if there is a student or a discount card, and this is a decision, so I'll put that in a diamond shape. If the answer is yes, then do we give them a discount? No, not necessarily, because it depends on whether it's a Saturday or not. So I need to decide, is it a Saturday? Is it Saturday? decision, which is a diamond. If it is Saturday, yes, then the price, so I'm going to put into an assignment, my price is equal to the original cost. In other words, there's no discount. Okay, and then I'm going to output the price. And output is a parallelogram. Okay, so you can see what we get there. If it is not a Saturday, then my price is different. My price is the half of the cost. And then I'm going to output my price. And then after I've outputted my price, I'm going to end. Okay, if the student has a discount card, if they don't know, then I work out what I go straight into my here, so I jump over there, and my price is my original cost. Okay, and then I output my price and go to the end. Okay, these questions were based on your Blockly code, or and it asks you, what does this code do? And hopefully you can see here, this says next costume, and so you will see that the next costume is basically B here, make the shark change costume or look. Okay, question 16, what does this do? Notice this box here is making the Y position decrease, okay, and so down here, so this makes the Y position decrease by 2, okay, so if the Y, remember Y is going up here, this is my Y and this is my X, so if my Y is decreasing by 2, it's going down, so the apple is going to fall down, so the answer is C. So what does this do? So basically it's going to move 10 steps and it's going to go in this loop forever. Okay, so it's going to carry on, go round and round and round this loop, and if it's on the edge, it's bounce. Okay, so it's basically going to run across, get to the edge and go back again, and so therefore the answer to this is C. Question 18, what is the astronaut? And we should see, if we look really carefully here, basically this astronaut here is actually a picture of a bitmap image, and another word for a bitmap image is a sprite. The answer is sprite. Question 19 is, what is the name of the variables used in this script? Circle the correct answer. So what is the variable? We need to work out where the variable is here, and it says here, set the variable house to something, and you can see we're checking to say if, here's a decision, if the house is 1, blah blah blah. Okay, so the variable that we're using here is house. Okay, so this question is all about these grids, and it says each robot that moves through this grid are, I've got rules. Alpha paints the rows starting with an odd number. So starting with an odd number, in other words, this is the starting value. So remember, these down here, these are the rows, and across this way are the columns. Okay, so which are the rows that start with an odd number? This is clearly row 1. So all of these rows are being painted. Row 1 is being painted, and row 3 is being painted. Okay, so that's alpha is painting those. So let's just say this is alpha. Let's do beta in green. What does beta do? Beta paints every column starting with an even number. So our columns are vertical, a bit like columns in the Colosseum. Columns look like that, they're vertical. And all the vertical columns that start with an even number. So this is column 2 and column 4. Okay, so this is beta. And gamma, let's do gamma in red. Gamma paints all squares where the row and column numbers add up to an even number. Okay, so 1 plus 1 is 2, so that gets that painted. 1 plus 2 is not even, 1 plus 3 is even, 1 plus 4 is odd, 2 plus 1 is odd, 2 plus 2 is even, 2 plus 4 is even, 3 plus 4 is odd, 3 plus 3 is even, and 3 plus 1 is even, and 4 plus 2 is even, and 4 plus 4 is even. And the question says, which squares are not painted at all? So we can see the ones that are not painted. They're the ones that are yellow here. 1, 2, 3, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 4. The mark schemes for this are, you get 1 mark if 2 correctly selected. You get 2 marks if 3 are correctly selected, and you get all 3 marks if all 4 are correctly selected. And of course you don't have any selected that shouldn't be selected, of course. Okay, this question says we've got 5 islands, A, B, C, D, and E. Now, if I was doing this, I'd draw a picture of the islands. Here's our islands: A, B, C, D, and island E. Doesn't matter where we draw them. It says A connects to B and C. So A connects to B and C. And B connects to D. And C connects to D, and D connects to E. Okay. A bottle with a message is thrown into the river at island A. So basically we've got a river on island A. It always travels randomly across a bridge to another island. Which island is impossible to reach after exactly 2 moves? So if we're going from A and we've got 2 moves, we can either go 1, 2, in which case we get to D. We get 1, 2, in which case we get to D. We could go 1, 2 and back to A, so go to C and back to A, or we can go from A to B and back to A. So we can get to any of the islands in 2 moves except for island E. So the correct answer is island E. Can you see how a little diagram helps understand how that works. Okay, the next question says we've got a drone that must deliver packages to 3 cities, city A, B and G. Okay, and the idea here is that the drone starts at the warehouse. So we've got warehouse, city A, B and G. So what I would do there is I would draw a little diagram again. We've got city A, city B and city G, and we've got a warehouse that sits here. And it says the drone starts at its warehouse. It must deliver to each city exactly once. It can only fly along these direct paths. Okay, from warehouse to city A is 5 kilometers. So notice I've drawn a little diagram, and I've got 5 kilometers there. You put rectangles around these if you want to. You don't have to. So that's 5 kilometers that way. Warehouse to city B is 7 kilometers. Okay, so that's 7 kilometers there. And warehouse city G is 8 kilometers. City A to city B, so that's that way, this is 6 kilometers. City A to city G, obviously it's not to scale, this is an abstraction, it's called, removing the unnecessary details of exactly where geographically they are. It's just a diagram to illustrate it. That's 6 kilometers. And city B to city G, which of course is this way, is 3 kilometers. What is the shortest possible total distance the drone must travel to complete all deliveries? Okay, so obviously we're starting at the warehouse, because the drone starts at the warehouse, it tells you that, and we want the quickest route to get there. And we can think about that by trying to, there's actually a famous algorithm, you won't know this, which is fine, you actually do this at A-level computer science, it's called Dijkstra's shortest path algorithm. Now you don't know that, but there is an algorithm by a man called Dijkstra, who is Dutch I believe, and he created lots and lots of really cool algorithms for solving problems like this. I'm going to leave it to you to work out that actually you can travel all the deliveries to A, B and G by doing exactly 12 kilometers. The answer is 12. Okay, next question. It says look at the following algorithm, and we've got a function called mystery n. N is a number of some description, an integer. It tells, what about mystery 10? So what happens if we put a 10 into here? What happens? It says if, so remember n is 10, if 10 equals 0, is 10 equals 0? No, it isn't. So it goes on to the next bit. If 10 modulo 2, and this is the remainder, remember modulus, we did this in class, is the remainder. So if I take n is 10 and I divide by 2, 2 goes into 10 exactly, and therefore there is 0 remainder. Okay, so this is actually 0. So if 0 equals 0, yes it is. So it's this code here that we need to calculate. So therefore we calculate 1 plus, and then mystery, so we're going to call this again, in other words, go back up to here, and we're going to do n div 2, and n is 10. 10 div 2 is how many times it does, n div 2, how many times does 2 go into 10? That's 5. So, okay, so it's going to put a 5 into here now, so Okay, so this 5 is going to go up here. Okay, so we're trying to work out what this value is here. Okay, so n is 5. So it says if n is 0, which it isn't, is 5 mod 2 equal 0? No, it isn't. Because 5 modulo 2 is how many times 2 go into 5? Twice, with 1 remainder. Okay, so therefore we're going to run this code this time, and this is going to be 1 plus, and we've got mystery, so this thing here we're going to call mystery again with n minus 1. Well, n is 5, so this becomes a 4. Alright, so that means that we're going to yet again call this same thing again up here, and this becomes a 4. Okay, if n equals 0, it isn't. But does 2 divide exactly into 4? Yes, it does. So we're back at this place again, and we're going to add 1 plus mystery div 2, which is 4 div 2, and 4 div 2 is 2. So we're going to end up with mystery 2. You can see we're basically going to go round and round and round this code, and I'm going to leave that to you to work out exactly what that is, but the correct answer is 6. That's a tough question, by the way. That's towards the end of the exam now. That's really quite a hard question. An assembly robot must assemble a toy in 5 steps: A, B, C, D, E. Step A must happen before C and D. Okay, so let's try and work this out. So A must happen before C and D. So I would say if we've got a step and maybe its predecessors are ones that it requires to be there. So step A has got predecessors. Sorry. Step A must happen before C and D. So if we've got steps C and D, sorry. If we've got steps C and D, A must happen before those. B must happen before D and E. Okay, so D and E, B must happen before those. Okay, so that means the predecessors of D are not just A but B as well, and then I can get rid of this thing here. And it says step C must happen before E, so this has got a predecessor of C. Okay, so B and C happen before E. How many valid orders of steps are there? Okay, so how many different ways can we get steps? So the way that you need to do that is to work out, if we start with A, are we allowed to start with A? And then you need to say, am I allowed to start with B? And you need to look at that table and figure out how many possible orders there are. And if you do that, you'll end up coming up with 6 of those. I'll leave that for you to work that out. Okay, 25, these are the slightly easier questions again. So these questions were quite hard. These are definitely hard questions. You may have got lucky and got them right. You may have got them right because you're really brainy, but they're tough. Okay, what does HTML stand for? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. What tag is used to display an image? That's an IMG tag. And now we've got some HTML and we need to look at that, and it says, what is the purpose of the head tag? Well, the head tag contains metadata about your website, or contains information, or what's called metadata. Metadata is data about data. In other words, it's data about your website. Okay, so that's one answer that you could have. or you might say that it contains information that is not displayed in the website. That is not displayed. To users. Okay, so things that the sorts of things that you have in the head are things like search tags that Google search uses to find information on your website. That's really important, that if you've got a website and you want Google to find it, that you have some tags in there that explain what your website is about. And that's how you increase your hit to your website, and so they're obviously really important. 28. What shows up on the browser tab when you open this image? The browser tab is basically the title, so it's this thing, so that goes in here. Which tags creates the image heading, main heading? A heading tag is an H1 tag. Okay, or you can have the closing H1 tag as well if you want to. Okay, what does the alt attribute do? This is an alternative text to the image. And quite rightly, some of you wrote that it's used for people who are blind. One of you said it's for people who are deaf, which I didn't quite get. But anyway, alternative text to the image, useful for blind people. Okay, or useful also for you get things like web crawlers that are basically go through internet web pages and search for stuff like Google. So useful for search engines too. So obviously these days we've got much better image analysis tools, but analyzing an image with AI is really expensive still, and so the alt tags help search engines understand what the image might be about. So what happens if myphoto.jpg can't be found? Basically, it provides the text, provides the alt text. What part of the code creates a clickable link? Well, a clickable link. By the way, just in the previous question, the alt tag is a photo of me. The text of photo of me is displayed. What part creates a critical link? Well, this is the A tag. A stands for anchor, and the href equals, in here, this is what the link is. Okay, what kind of list is shown? We look at this thing here. These are the lists. This UL here stands for unordered list. So UL, this stands for unordered. What would you change to make the image smaller? Well, you could change the width or height properties. And in this case, obviously, it is width, as you can see up there. So in actual fact, let's remove that. It is the width property. Write the line of code to add a new list item titled blog below contact. So here we want a new list item. LI stands for list item, and then we put in our blog, and then we must end our list item tag.